Close your eyes for a second. Actually, don't. You're reading this. But imagine it. You're lying on the floor of a cave. Not a romantic cave with torchlit walls and animal paintings. A real one. Cold stone, animal skins, the smell of smoke, the sound of wind, doing something deeply unsettling outside. It's maybe 40,000 years ago, maybe 70,000. Doesn't matter exactly. What matters is this. It's the middle of the night and you just woke up. Not because of a noise, not because of danger. You woke up because something was happening inside your head. Something vivid, strange, emotionally overwhelming. And now it's gone. Dissolving the second your eyes opened, leaving you lying there in the dark with a feeling you have absolutely no words for because language as we know it barely exists yet. What just happened to you? Here's what most people assume. Ancient humans had simple dreams, survival stuff. Run from the predator, find the food, maybe the face of someone they lost. Basic inputs, basic outputs. The prehistoric brain running its nightly defrag. Nothing too complicated. That assumption is almost certainly wrong. And the reasons why tell us something genuinely unsettling about what consciousness actually is and how far back it goes. Let's start with the biology, because the biology doesn't lie. The part of the human brain responsible for dreaming, the limbic system, the amygdala, the regions that handle emotion, memory, and threat response, is not a new development. It is ancient. We're talking hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary history. Lizards have versions of it. Birds have it. Every mammal that has ever been studied shows REM sleep, the stage where the most vivid, emotionally complex dreaming happens. Your dog is dreaming right now, or will be. The twitching paws, the muffled vocalizations, that's not a glitch. That's the same system running in them that runs in you. Which means that when a Homo sapiens lay down 50,000 years ago on that cold stone floor, their brain was not running a simpler version of what yours does at night. It was running essentially the same version. Same architecture, same stages, same neurochemical flood. The hardware was identical. So the question isn't whether ancient humans dreamed. They absolutely did. Every night without exception, whether they wanted to or not. The real question, the one that should stop you cold, is what they were dreaming about, and why those dreams may have shaped the entire course of human history in ways we're only beginning to understand. Here's something neuroscientists figured out relatively recently that completely reframes how we think about early human minds. Dreams are not random. They never were. For a long time, the dominant scientific view was that dreaming was essentially neural static. Your brain powering down, files being shuffled, random signals firing in the dark. Meaning? None. Just biological noise dressed up in narrative clothing by a brain that can't help making stories out of everything. It's a tidy explanation. It's also increasingly looking like it's wrong. The theory that replaced it, and the one that makes the most sense when you look at the evidence, is called the threat simulation theory, proposed by Finnish neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo in 2000. The basic argument is this. Dreaming evolved specifically as a survival mechanism. The sleeping brain runs threat rehearsals. It simulates dangerous scenarios, being chased, falling, losing someone, failing at something critical, so that when those scenarios happen in real life, the organism is better prepared to respond. Not consciously, not deliberately, automatically. A nightly training program running in the background without your permission. And here's where it gets interesting for ancient humans. Think about what their threat landscape actually looked like. Not the abstract modern threats most of us deal with. The email you didn't answer, the meeting that went sideways, the money stuff you avoid thinking about at 2 a.m. Real threats, immediate physical ones, a predator that could kill you before you finished waking up, a rival group that knew where your camp was, a winter coming that you weren't sure you had enough food for, a child running a fever with no medicine in 100 miles. If the threat simulation theory is correct, ancient human brains were running the most intense, high-stakes threat rehearsals in the history of our species. Every night. The dreams were vivid because the threats were real. The fear was genuine because the consequences of failure were death. The brain wasn't generating noise. It was doing the most important preparation work it knew how to do. There's supporting evidence for this that goes beyond theory. Studies of people living in genuinely dangerous environments today, conflict zones, areas of extreme poverty, communities facing real daily physical risk, consistently show higher rates of threat-based dreaming than people in stable, safe environments. The brain scales the rehearsal to the actual danger level. It always has. which means the ancient human waking up terrified at 3 a.m. wasn't having a bad dream. They were graduating from a training session their brain designed specifically to keep them alive until morning. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody sees coming. At some point, and researchers genuinely cannot pin down exactly when, ancient humans stopped just having dreams and started doing something about them. Something intentional. Something that would eventually become one of the oldest and most universal human behaviors ever documented across every culture on Earth. They started trying to control what happened inside their own heads at night. The evidence for this is scattered, strange, and more convincing than it has any right to be. Start with the oldest religious tradition we can identify: shamanism. Not a single organized religion with a founding text and a hierarchy. Something older and messier than that. A set of practices appearing independently across Siberia, the Americas, Africa, Australia, and Southeast Asia, cultures that had no contact with each other, separated by oceans and tens of thousands of years, all converging on the same core idea: that certain individuals could cross into another state of consciousness, a dream-adjacent space, and come back with information useful to the group. Healing knowledge, hunting knowledge, warnings, guidance from ancestors. The methods varied. Rhythmic drumming sustained at specific beats per minute that neurologically nudges the brain toward theta wave states, the same brainwave frequency associated with the hypnagogic zone between waking and sleep. Fasting for days until the boundary between conscious and unconscious started dissolving. Plant medicines that pharmacologically forced the brain into something resembling a waking dream state. Sensory deprivation in total darkness for extended periods. These weren't random experiments. They were sophisticated, refined techniques developed over generations through careful observation of what actually worked. Trial and error at the level of human consciousness itself. And then there's the cave art problem. Because for decades, archaeologists assumed that the extraordinary paintings found deep inside caves like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain were simply records of the animals ancient humans hunted. Hunting magic maybe, religious symbolism possibly. Then researchers started paying attention to where exactly these paintings were located, not near cave entrances where light reached, deep inside, in chambers requiring hours of difficult underground travel to reach, in total darkness, in near-complete silence, in spaces so enclosed that the carbon dioxide levels would have produced altered mental states just from breathing. South African archaeologist David Lewis Williams proposed something that stopped the field cold. The paintings weren't records of the world outside, they were records of what people saw inside their own minds. Visions, hallucinations, dreams made permanent on stone walls in the dark. Ancient humans weren't just dreaming, they were archiving their dreams. They were treating the contents of their unconscious minds as information worth preserving, worth walking hours underground to capture before it disappeared. That changes everything about how we understand what those minds actually were. Here's where we have to be honest, and honesty in this territory is uncomfortable. We cannot read a dream that happened 40,000 years ago. We cannot excavate a nightmare. There is no archaeological layer that preserves the interior experience of a sleeping mind. Every specific claim about what ancient humans actually dreamed, the content, the texture, the emotional weight of those nightly experiences, is inference. Educated, evidence-based inference built on neuroscience and anthropology and comparative psychology, but inference nonetheless. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. And that limitation matters, because the history of humans studying other humans across time is littered with confident conclusions that turned out to be projections. We assumed ancient people thought like us because we couldn't imagine them thinking differently. We assumed their inner lives were simpler because simpler was more comfortable than the alternative. We built entire academic frameworks on those assumptions and then spent generations carefully dismantling them when the evidence stopped cooperating. So let's sit with what we actually cannot know. We don't know if ancient humans had a concept of dreaming as distinct from waking experience. Some researchers believe the boundary between dream and reality was far more permeable for early humans, that the vivid hallucinatory quality of dreams in a pre-scientific mind might have been experienced not as obviously not real, but as a genuine second world, as real and as meaningful as the physical one. Others think that's romantic projection. The argument continues and probably always will. We don't know if the emotions in ancient dreams mapped onto anything we would recognize. Fear probably translates. The neurochemistry of threat response is old enough that it almost certainly does. But grief? Longing? The specific texture of dreaming about someone you love? Whether those experiences felt anything like what you feel? Genuinely unknown. We also don't know what they did with the experience of dreaming before ritual frameworks developed to give it meaning. The first human to wake up terrified from a vivid nightmare, thousands of years before shamanism existed, before any cultural container had been built to hold that experience. What did they do with it? Did they tell someone? Did they have the language to describe it? Did it shake them in ways that had no name yet? These gaps are not failures of science. They're honest acknowledgments of what evidence can and cannot reach. The absence of proof is not proof of absence. It's just silence. And silence in archaeology is the loudest thing there is. What we do know is that the dreams happened, every night without interruption, for hundreds of thousands of years, in minds that were functionally identical to yours. That part is not inference. That part is certain. Here's the thing that should stay with you long after you've closed this video. Your brain tonight will do something it has done every single night of your life without asking your permission. Somewhere between 90 and 120 minutes after you fall asleep, your eyes will start moving behind your eyelids. Your body will go almost completely paralyzed. A safety mechanism so ancient it predates our species entirely. Your heart rate will shift. Your brain will flood with a neurochemical cocktail that makes certain regions more active than they are when you're fully awake. And then something will happen that has no perfect name and no complete explanation and has been happening to creatures with brains since long before anything that looked like a human walked this earth. You will dream. The same thing happened last night to a person lying on the floor of a cave in what is now southern France, wrapped in animal fur, with no word for what was occurring inside their skull, with no framework to explain why the dead sometimes spoke to them in the dark, why they sometimes flew, why the most terrifying moments of their waking life returned at night with the volume turned all the way up. Same brain, same stages, same neurochemical flood, same inexplicable vividness fading the moment consciousness returned. You are not separated from that person by sophistication or complexity or the fundamental nature of your inner life. You are separated from them by time and language and the cultural scaffolding we've built around an experience that neither of you fully understands. Think about every technology that defines your life, the device you're watching this on, the infrastructure that powers it, the accumulated scientific knowledge of 10,000 years of human civilization. All of it, every last piece, is a product of the waking mind. None of it touches what happens when you close your eyes. In sleep, you go back. Every human being, every single night, crosses back over a threshold that all the technology in the world cannot move. Back into the oldest version of the human experience there is, unmediated, unfiltered, running on hardware that hasn't fundamentally changed in 100,000 years. The ancient human woke up in the dark, shaking from something they couldn't explain, and lay there listening to the fire die down, trying to hold on to the edges of whatever had just visited them. Tonight you'll do the same thing. Maybe not the shaking, maybe not the dying fire, but that moment of lying there in the dark, reaching for something already dissolving. That moment is exactly theirs. It always was. It still is. It always will be.